This recording is for Primary 3, the Challenging Word Problems, pages 4 and 5. The entire assignment this week is for pages 1 through 5. The first 3 are the worked examples, so my hope is that you will work through those with your child on one of the days and talk through the solutions and the strategies that they show, and then I'll show you the strategies for the ones that are not worked. Starting with problem number 1, we know that Joel collected 4,352 stamps, but he had fewer than Mark by 469. So with Singapore math, we generally show things in bars and graph it out this way. So this is Joel's stamp, but what we know is that Mark had more than him. Now this part of the bar is the same. They had this much the same. Okay, so that's why we make the bars look the same. But then we also know that Mark had more than him by 469. Generally, it's easier to do the addition part, the more than to try on Joel's that he had less than. And what we also know is that Joel had 4,352. The question is, how many stamps did Mark collect? Well, when we have the picture drawn, it's really obvious. 4,352 is the amount in the blue bar, and if I'm going to add those two together to find out how many Mark has, then we need to work on, as always, working on some mental math, and we want to see what we can do to make it as easy as possible to add numbers together. You can just simply add straight across. We always prefer to do left to right addition instead of right to left, just because that's how we use the mental math of it. And so if I kind of color code the hundreds and tens and ones, we can see that I'm going to look at the thousands as just a 4. Now I have 7 hundreds, but if I look at the pink, the tens give me another 100. So that's going to be an 800. When I take 100 out of the pink, I have a 1 left, and the 9 and the 2 in the ones column also make a 10, so that's going to give me a 2 in the tens column. Once I've made the 10 in the ones column, I have 1 left over. So Mark has 4,821 stamps. When your student does the work, please make sure that they, as the instructions say, show the work and write the statements clearly. And so you could say 4,821 stamps, or you could even say Mark has 4,821 stamps. I'll let you, as a homeschool mom, decide how much of a statement you want, if you want a period at the end of it, or just a statement, or what exactly. Number 2 tells us that there are 2,450 adults at a conference. Some of them are men, some of them are women. To draw this one, I would draw the fact that there are 2,450 adults at a conference, and I know 896 are women. Of course, that means the rest of them are men. And then the question is, how many men are there? So 2,450 subtract 896. Now, you don't have to write it down, because that's the idea of mental math. But if I think in terms of take away 900 and put 4 back, that's the same thing as subtracting 896. It's a little easier to take away 900 than to take away 896. So if I take from 2400s, if I take 900s away, I'm going to be left with 1500s. And I have a 50, but I've got to put those 4 back. So 1,554 men are at the conference. This is answer A. The second question says, how many more men than women are there? Well, the difference between the two is a subtraction problem, and once again, I could subtract 900 and put 4 back. When I subtract 900 from 1,500, I'm at 600, and when I put 4 back, I'll put 658, and so then I would say there's 658 more men than women. It's also a great habit to have your children learn to box their answers, so you as a teacher can find them easily, and it's really obvious where they stopped and what answers they chose to use. Another way you can draw this if you draw men and women and you say we have some men, we don't know how many there are, we have the women are 896, you know that together they're 2,450. So that's another way to draw it. It works the same. When you're finding how many more men than women, then you're just realizing that this part of it is the same, the 896, and you're looking for how much is left over here. So when you have found, as we did in the first part, that there are 1,554 men, then you can find the empty spot by subtracting the 900 and putting 4 back. Number 3, Mr. Albert had $997 and he planned to buy a plasma TV, but he was short by $498. So the question is, how much did the plasma TV cost? If you mark, you can draw it again a number of ways. He has $997. He's short. He is not having enough by $498, and when you put those together, that's how much he would have to spend for a plasma TV. So we're going to add to get 400, or add 498 to find the cost of the TV. Okay, now in the hint it says, in adding two large numbers, look for an effective or a shorter way to do it. When I have these two numbers, there's a couple of ways I could do it. Let's talk about those, because every time we do Singapore math, we always want to work on mental math and doing things well. If I take 3 of these over here, I'm just adding them together. Think of, if I've got a big circle with 997 somethings in it, and this circle has 498 somethings. If I take 3 of them out and put them over here, so this number goes down by 3 and this number goes up by 3, it's the same combined amount. So if I did that, the reason I would do that is because that gives me 1,000 here and 495 on my other number, which is a total of 1,495. It's a little bit easier to add 1,000 plus 495 than it is to add the top set of numbers. You could also take the 2 from the 997 and put it with the 498 to make 500. That also gives you 1,495. So how you add that is up to you, but I strongly encourage you not to stack them and go right to left, but find another way to have your children, your students, add those numbers. Number 4, interesting question. How many times does the digit 0 appear in the numbers from 1 to 100? And the hint is to use a systematic list. Let's think about the digit 0. What numbers does it show up in? Well, it's in 10 and 20 and 30. It's in all of those numbers all the way to 90. And actually, if we're going to go to 100, then we're just going to look at the ones digit. Okay, we're not going to worry about the tens digit yet. But in the ones digit, in the ones place, it actually occurs 10 times. Then we want to think about 0 in the tens place. Well, the interesting thing is we never put a 01, 02, 03. When the 0 is in front, when it's a leading digit, you never put it in the tens place. So the only other time you have it in the tens place is in the number 100. So that happens one more time. And of course, from 1 to 100, you do have a 3-digit number, but of course the 0 is not there. So the systematic list tells us that we have a 0 in the numbers 1 to 100. That happens 10 or 11 times. 10 times in the ones place, 1 time in the tens place. Number 5, a movie theater has 1,210 seats. During the first movie, 947 seats were taken. So let's look at movie 1. And again, there may be many ways to make a drawing. And and how I do it isn't always the way you're going to see it first, and that's perfectly fine. According to our information, a movie seat has 1,210 seats, and 947 of them are taken, and these, of course, are empty. During the second showtime, now it's the same theater, we still have the same 1,210 seats, but what we're told this time is about the empty seats. There's 139 empty seats. And the question is, how many people watch the movie all together, the two shows all together? Well, I could add those up if I only knew this second number. So we're going to do a two-step problem. We're going to start by finding out how many people did in fact watch that movie in the second time, and then I'll combine the two numbers. Again, we want to add mentally whenever possible. I'm going to look for a minute at the 210 and take the 139 out of it. To go from 139 to 210, first I'm going to add 1 and be at 140, and then you could think of adding 60 to be at 200, and adding 10 more to be at 210. The difference between them is 71. Now, if I stacked those up and down and subtracted the old way, what I'll call the old way, and borrowed and continued on working it like that, I'd also get 71. But if you think about it, from 39 to 40 is 1, from 40 to 100 is 61, and from 100 to 110 makes 71. And of course, there's a 1,000 in there. So when I subtract those two numbers, what I find is I have 1,071 people. 1,071 people watched the second movie. Then I need to find out altogether how many people watched the two movies. So I'm going to add 947 and 1,071. Again, mentally, you're just going to look at all the different parts of the number and figure out when you're going to carry something over, when you're going to end up with a 10 that makes a bigger number. In the green numbers, in the tens place, the 7 and 4 is going to make a 10, which will carry over to the hundreds place, which will make the 900s another 1,000. So instead of 1,000, I'm going to have 2,000, but I'm not going to have any hundreds left over. I'll have 1 10 and 8 ones. So according to this, there were 2,800 people who watched for the during the two showings. Number 6, Steve has 500 more marbles than Richard at first. So Steve and Richard, whatever they have that's the same, but then Steve has 500 more marbles at first. And then he gives 300 of them to Richard. So if you take this and think of this as the 500, we could even divide them up. It helps you to be, remember, your students at this age are still going to be very concrete. And so when you take these 3 off and put them down here, and I can even erase my 3 and actually move them, then instead of 500 here, I have 200 above my blue block, and Richard has 300 above his base number. So the question is, who has more marbles now, and by how many? And the answer would simply be that Richard has 100 more marbles. So if he was up by 500 and he gave 300 away, then now he has 200, and Richard has 300. So Richard has 100 more marbles. And that is all of the problems for this recording.